Today we have Andrew Westoll, the author of the book The Chimps of Fauna Sanctuary, which is about a chimp sanctuary in Canada run by Gloria Grow and Richard Allen. Before you went to Fauna, you were in Suriname studying capuchin monkeys. What led you to the sanctuary outside of Montreal?
Well, as a young biologist, I'd heard about fauna, and when I was before I got this job to go to Suriname, I had tried to volunteer there, and one thing led to another. It didn't work out, and I got this dream job to go and live in the Upper Amazon basin for a year. So I took that instead, and then I became a writer. I left science, and for some reason, I don't really know why, fauna just popped back into my head, and I sold a magazine article about fauna to a big magazine here in Canada. And I came home one night and I told my fiance that, and she said, "What's the magazine article about?" And I told her. She's like, "Andrew, that's not a magazine article, that's your next book." And 3 months later, I was moving into fauna for 10 weeks, and Gloria had invited me to live with her family and write a biography of them.
Tell us about your struggles to be accepted, not only by the animals, from the chimps to Eeyore the donkey, but also the humans.
Sure, yeah. You know what? The humans were really... We'll start with the humans. They were incredibly welcoming, more so than I was expecting. I found a lot of people I've talked to who work at sanctuaries or who support sanctuaries are actually a little reticent to talk too much about what goes on there, or to welcome people into that kind of world, because I think it takes a lot of background to really understand it. And I think some of, you don't want to be having a ton of people through your place all the time who don't know the background. But I was really surprised. The good thing about fauna, I think, also is it's all Gloria's family. Like, her sisters are working in the chimp house, and so they were welcoming just like Gloria was. So the humans were not a problem at all. The chimpanzees were variously welcoming right from the start. Some of them wouldn't have anything to do with me. Tom definitely was not interested in this tall, bearded, hairy guy who was hanging around. Sue Ellen, who happens to really love tall, bearded, hairy men, she loved me right away. And I don't think that's me. I think Sue Ellen is just like that. She's just very welcoming and not as anxious around strangers. So it really ran the gamut of sort of being accepted, or maybe really having to work on a relationship with the chimps. I think the male chimpanzees were obviously a lot more difficult to I don't know, get used to my presence, and that fits with what we know about, chimp behavior. I mean, the whole book is about me being accepted, so I don't know how deep you want me to go into that, but you feel free to ask other questions about it.
Okay. The sections you've written on the research facilities and what is done there are very descriptive. What do you want your readers to take away from this book concerning animal research?
I think the first and primary thing would be the fact that this stuff is actually still being done on chimpanzees. A lot of times when I tell people about it, they sort of look at me and they don't really believe me. The fact is, there's over 500 chimpanzees in labs in America that are actually owned by taxpayers. This when you tell someone on the street this, they're actually quite stunned. So the first thing I would say is, I really want people to be aware of what's happening because they own these chimpanzees. And the second thing, I guess, I mean, there's so many things that I hope people take from the book, and I think everyone takes something differently. And I don't want to tell people how to think either, but I do want people to really consider whether, based on the evidence we have now, whether or not this is something that we should still be doing.
Right.
And I am very careful to keep the conversation to chimpanzees themselves. I know animal research as a whole is a huge topic and really requires 2 PhDs to get your head around. In terms of the chimpanzee story, I think think I have enough of an understanding now to say, you know, let's have a conversation about this and let's end it, because it's not worth it.
Right, right. Tell us about the changes that you went through as you got to know the chimps and the issues that they lived with.
Yeah, people ask me that question, and as a writer, I'm never finished with a book, and the reason I write a book is so that I can unpack an experience and really understand what it means to me. And to be honest, and I'm not being coy, I really am still figuring it out for myself, how I was affected by it. I think in a really basic sense, my mind was blown by the sheer individualness of each of the chimpanzees. I mean, this is something we know, we've sort of absorbed through culture, that chimps are individual personalities, but until you spend time with them and really get to know them, which I only just scratched the surface of, it's such a surreal recognition in another species that they are so intelligent and so social and so emotional. Mm-hmm. So I guess the first thing was my mind was just utterly blown by the experience. You know, I don't consider myself an animal activist. I consider myself someone who's delved pretty deeply into a topic and has made my mind up. And, you know, say what you will, maybe some people think writing a book is a pretty active thing to do, and I guess they're probably right. But I guess it's sort of made me wake up a little bit to the plight of animals, and I'm still figuring out how to, you know, work that into my everyday life and what it really means to me. And maybe we'll talk a year from now and I'll have a different answer.
Gloria Grow, the owner of Fauna, in your book you mentioned she went to Washington, D.C. to push for the Great Ape Protection Act.
Right.
Do you know where that act stands now?
It's in committee, which means not a lot. It means it's on a list of things to be discussed. I think more importantly right now is the fact that the National Institutes of Health is holding a public hearing. I think yesterday and today actually were the 2 days of the public hearing, I may be wrong about that, on the use of chimpanzees in research. And it was all, I'd like to say my book caused this public hearing to take place. Of course it did not. You will remember earlier this year that bunch of chimpanzees in New Mexico who were going to be shipped out of retirement and back into research, and it caused a big hubbub. So that's why the Institutes of Health are actually considering the issue right now, and I think they're going to give their report by the end of the year. So, you know, this is still an important thing to talk about, even if the Great Ape Protection and Cost Savings Act is still in committee. I mean, the fact is, it's been introduced to Congress, and that's a gigantic thing.
Well, this is interesting to me. What life lessons did Tom and the rest of the chimps teach you by the time you left the sanctuary? I know you were towards the end of the book. The subject of Tom is very touching, and obviously you answered part of this, but I'd just like to know what you thought of him.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, first of all, that my fiance also was thinking I should write a second book, which is basically exactly that question: life lessons from fauna. There's a million things in my journals from my 10 weeks there that sort of just came to me from spending time with these beings. Geez, I mean, the things that Tom taught me, and the things that they're just endless. I mean, the idea of resilience and the fact that no matter what has happened to you, you can pick yourself up. I mean, I haven't even had a life that requires that kind of teaching, but I think I was able to take that from Tom, and I feel utterly blessed that I was able to meet him, and that, you know, I haven't had to suffer like he has, and yet I was still able to sort of take that lesson from him that no matter what happens, if you're still breathing, there's still reason to keep going. I mean, this is me, this is a human putting, you know, a structure upon another animal's life experience, and I know this is just coming from me, but I think resilience is one thing. I think trust is another thing. I mean, Tom, of all the animals on the planet, Tom had less reason than any of them to trust human beings again, and he did, and it took him a really long time. But he's the first chimp to submit to medical attention from Gloria, which really turned the tide in the chimp house and helped Gloria get everyone else on side in the early days. And I mean, the lessons he's taught Gloria are endless, and she deserves to write her own book about that. I think depending on who you are and what personality you have, you'll have a different sort of meaning from your interactions with any animal, but especially an animal as complex as a chimp and as stoic and as epic as Tom the chimp.
And tell us what's next for you. Another book?
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of ideas. I definitely think, you asked me earlier how this has affected me in my life. I definitely think I'm going to be writing about animals a heck of a lot more now. I don't want to be a generalist as a writer anymore. I really want to focus on the human-animal relationship and the incredible stories that are out there. I just got back from Congo. The Jane Goodall Institute invited me to their sanctuary in Congo called Chimpunga, and I got to meet 145 orphan chimpanzees. And I mean, I'll never have an experience like that again in my life. And so I'm writing about that now, as a journalist. I got 2 or 3 book ideas that are on my mind that I think are really important, that have to do with humans and animals, and I haven't narrowed it down yet. But trust me, if you see another one from me, shoot me a line, and I'd love to come on TV again with you.
Oh, great! We will, definitely. Well, that's all I have for you today. If you have anything else you'd like to talk about, that'd be fine.
Well, I think the one thing I would just say is that this piece of legislation in the Senate and the Congress right now really needs everyone's support, and I would just really like to say, I mean, as a Canadian who has far less to say over American politics, every American out there has the ability to really impact things, and I would just say, if you do read the book or you find out about fauna and you want to support them, please do write to your representatives and ask them to support the Great Ape Protection and Cost Savings Act. I think it's an incredibly responsible thing to do, ethically, morally, financially, scientifically. There's so many reasons to do it, even if you're not an animal lover or an animal activist or anything. It's a really good place to put your ink and your paper. So